work here, and how you work, how your body works, how your nervous system works. Frequent, you know, has anybody ever here been to more than one chiropractor?
Been to what?
More than one chiropractor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm sure that if you've been to 100 chiropractors, that you got 100 different ways of getting adjusted. You know, it's not a standardized prescription pad like it is with the medical doctor. You know, you have a headache and they write you a pill, and you have a back pain and they write you a pill, you have blood pressure, they write you a pill. With chiropractic, there's lots of different ways that we can approach things. And so it's very good for you to understand, it's very helpful for you to understand what I'm doing. How many, you've probably experienced the low force and gentle adjustments. And you've probably experienced the tool adjustments where we adjust with the activator and makes a little click. Can you get my spine too? Thank you. And then we do the more traditional chiropractics where you may hear a popping sound or a clicking sound, and there's some movement more kind of done by hand. And that's a really powerful adjustment as well. Okay, so how many of you have been to the new patient orientation class or watched the DVD? I think we did we or not? You've never been to the patient orientation class? Okay, we're having one 2 weeks?
Next week,
next
Monday.
Okay.
Having been there, it's very informative.
Okay. And we gave you the DVD, but you haven't watched it yet.
We'll see it.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of know where we were as far as the ground goes, and how much foundation I needed to lay for this. Like I say, there's different ways that we approach our care. But the first thing to understand is, how do we get this way? Why do we need an adjustment? And just a quick review for those of you who have been to the class.
Quite all right.
You know, there's lots of different ways for your spine to respond and come up with a misalignment. The first way, of course, is just physical trauma. You can slip and fall on the ice when you're 12. You can roll out of bed when you're 3. You know, you can come out face first when you're born. Car accident when you're 20. Slip on the steps when you're 25. You know, and you kind of shake it off, right? You shake those things off your whole life. And then one day, when you're 30 or 40, you're reaching over to pick up a coffee cup, and you hear something snap, and you fall on the floor in pain, you can't get up for like 3 weeks. How does that happen? You know, people come in and, you know, when I do my new patient orientation class, I tell you that one of my favorite expressions, or one of the most common expressions that I hear is, Dr. Whittington, all I was doing was fill in the blank. All I was doing was tying my shoes. All I did was sneeze. All I did was reach into the cupboard for a coffee cup. How could that cause so much pain? Well, the bottom line is it didn't. It was just that last drop of water in the cup that made it flow over. Your body has been adapting its whole life to traumas and stresses and spinal subluxations and misalignments. And then just one day, it just can't handle it anymore. And, you know, I had a little girl in here the other day. How old is Selah? 3? 2.
She just turned 2.
She just turned 2. And her mom comes in. I checked her mom's spine. Her mom's spine feels really good. And I said, well, you know, why don't we check her spine? I was like, what is up with her? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, her spine feels like she's had a major trauma. And she said, well, you know, when she was 6 months old, she fell out of a car face first, but she was fine. But I could tell she wasn't fine. You know, and some days she would tell that she wasn't fine. Some days some chiropractor would say, when did you fall out of a car face first? Your neck feels like you've fallen out of a car face first when you were 6 months old. So that's one way, the physical way. The other is through activities of daily living and stress. Sitting at the computer, how we sleep. Do we sleep on our stomach? Do we sleep in a bad bed? Do we slouch when we watch TV? Do we lie in bed with our head propped forward like that reading? You know, all these things, they create spinal misalignment, pressure on your nervous system. Chemical stress. Did you know that if you eat something you're allergic to, it can release histamines into the spinal fluid and cause contraction of the dural membrane, which is the covering of the central nervous system? Did you know that? Not many people know that. You get a release of histamines into the spinal fluid. Now the spinal cord itself runs through the spine, and it's covered by a thin covering called the dura. And in between the spinal cord and the brain, and that dura mater, as it's called, is the spinal fluid. The spinal fluid pumps from the sacrum to the cranium. It's the craniosacral respiratory pump mechanism for the craniosacral fluid. And when that histamine is released into that, the whole entire nervous system contracts. And that's why you can eat something you're allergic to and have back pain or neck pain. Kind of interesting, huh? And then there's emotional stress. You know, you can tell the difference between somebody who's feeling good and excited and somebody who, you know, really maybe somebody just, you know, feeling depressed and down in the dumps. What are they going to look like?
Slouchy.
Head down, head turned, slumped shoulders. Now, all that is in response to emotional stress. So all these things go into our spine and our nervous system to create stress and trauma. A physical trauma can cause, you know, things like spurs, it can cause tearing of the discs, it can cause joint problems, it can cause arthritis, and all these other problems that cause misalignments of the spine can cause wear and tear over time. This guy needs a major adjustment. Okay. Done. So that's what it's about. So just like there's different ways to get a spinal subluxation or misalignment, there's different ways to address these. This class is going to be kind of to the point. It's going to be brief. My wife promised me out to a dinner party tonight that starts at 6:30, so we'll at least be done by 6:30. So I'm going to try and show you a few things and answer a few questions and really help you understand a little bit about what's going on. Now the first thing to note is because there's different ways that your nervous system responds, and this is very particular, what I'm getting ready to describe is very particular to my personal training. It's not something that's necessarily chiropractic wide. Okay, we're talking about my office here. Since there's different ways your body perceives stress and responds to stress and creates different types of subluxations, there's different ways to approach those different subluxations. Okay? Now, how many of you have ever had me adjust your spine with about the amount of pressure it would take to scratch your eyeball with? Just a gentle pressure on the neck, lifting up on the neck, pressing on the sacrum, just a tap or a pressure like that. How does that work? I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And if you are willing to be a volunteer, I'd like to have somebody who's never been adjusted before. Just to lie on the table and let me kind of go through what I see and do just a couple of gentle adjustments and see how you're responding. Perhaps they can see, and since you've never done it before, you have no expectations, you know, it's totally blind. But we'll see if we can do that. Now that gentle pressure application is called network chiropractic or network spinal analysis. It's a whole system of a way of approaching the spine. And I used to just do that almost exclusively. But I have so many other techniques and knowledge, and just, you know, I can't just limit myself to one thing. There's lots of different ways to approach the spine. So the first pressure application that we use is just gentle pressure in areas of the cranium and the sacrum. It's kind of the neck and the cranium and then the sacrum. Does that sound familiar? Cranial, sacral? Have you ever heard those terms before? Maybe like in massage, or there's craniosacral therapists, there's craniosacral massage, there's craniosacral, different types of craniosacrooccipital technique and chiropractic. So it's widely recognized that these two areas are very important for unwinding the whole spine. Now, the next force application that we use is something I use an instrument called an activator. And the activator looks like this. And it makes a very fast but short thrust. And it's designed to be set on, let's say, example, if we wanted to adjust L5, We would set it off just off to the side there like that and push it, and it would move the vertebrae. Now the effect of this is to move it very slightly, very quickly. It bypasses any muscular tension. So if somebody comes in and there's a lot of spasm and pain, rolling them on their side and trying to do a twisty adjustment, I'd be sometimes I describe it as trying to kick a tire that has too much air in it. This is a very gentle and effective and fast adjustment, just like that. It can be applied to the neck. See, it spun that vertebrae all the way around. Spin your head all the way around, just like that. No, just kidding, it doesn't do that. This is loose up here. This spine has seen a few demonstrations, so but it really does move things.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it like pulling a tablecloth out from underneath a wine glass. It's so fast that it can move things without jarring everything else around it. So that's the second application. Now the third application is the more traditional chiropractic adjustment, where you may hear a popping or clicking sound. Now some people really don't like those adjustments, and some people absolutely feel like if you're not doing that, you're not adjusting. And if that's what you need, and it's done at the right time, in the right place, it's the most, I can tell you, it's the most magnificent feeling you can ever experience in your life. It's like somebody lifting a car off of you. There's pressure that you may not even be consciously aware of, and when it's removed, all of a sudden, the response is, thank you. Thank you for doing that. That felt so good. It took so much pressure off. But that is more where I'm actually going to contact the vertebrae and kind of turn your head a little bit and give it a little push. And there's little capsules around these joints that contain fluid. When those capsules are stretched, that fluid goes into gas and it makes a little popping noise. People say, you popped my neck, or you cracked my neck. I don't like that. It's like you crack eggs. You pop a balloon, but you adjust a neck, and it may make a popping sound. You may adjust it back, and it may make a popping sound. But I'm not cracking your neck. That's for orthopedic surgeons to do. They can crack your neck, but not me. Okay, so that's the third type of force application that we're going to use. And sometimes I use the wedges, which straighten out the pelvis. If the pelvis is twisted, I put wedges under there and it bends it back in the right direction. And I much prefer that adjustment over twisting people on their side and pushing the hips one way and the shoulder the other way. Really, for one thing, it's easier on my body, but it's also easier on yours, and it works just as well, in my opinion. So, any questions so far? This is a great breaking point to take questions.
Can you have an adjustment without a cracking or popping sound?
Absolutely. You sure can. And so, what are we going to see with a low force adjustment? There will more than likely be no popping or cracking sounds. But what we will see is typically an increase in respiration, depth, and a decrease in respiration rate. In other words, breath gets deeper and slower. This is called the respiratory wave. And the breath can spread to areas where the spine was not breathing before. So if someone's lying on the table and their low back is moving when they breathe, make a contact, respiratory wave comes through, and an area of the spine, the breath moves through that area of the spine where it was not moving there before. It's called the respiratory wave. Now, this respiratory wave carries information. So I may be adjusting the sacrum. Somebody's lying on the table and their head is here. But I can adjust the network model, and you can look it up on the internet. There's lots of crazy stuff about it on the internet. The Association for Network Care